on a huge space station named Frontier Hold that floated high above the dry, rocky world of Kale-9. A small team of humans arrived for serious peace talks. The group was led by Dr. Elena Voss, a tall, calm woman who knew how to speak with both kindness and strength. Her only child, Mira, who was just 8 years old, walked right beside her, because the colony below had become too dangerous for little ones to stay alone. Mira kept one small hand on the thick scruff of Ruckus, her honey badger companion. Ruckus was short and heavy with coarse black fur, marked by silver streaks across his back and shoulders. He moved with a slow, rolling walk that made him look lazy until something made him angry. Ruckus had lived with the Voss family since he was a tiny kid. Elena found him half dead under a thorn bush during a survey trip on their harsh home planet. She nursed him back to health, and he never left Mira's side after that. He slept at the foot of her bed, followed her to lessons, and even rode in the scout buggy when she went out to play in the red dust. The colony kids called him the little tank, because nothing seemed to scare him or slow him down. The meeting room inside Frontier Hold was round and bright, with soft white lights shining from the high ceiling. Tall Virathi stood waiting for the humans. Their bodies were thin and graceful, covered in skin that looked like clear crystal. The light bounced off them in rainbow flashes, making the whole room feel cold and sharp. Their leader, Sub-Commander Thalkur, stepped forward. He wore a long, dark robe, edged with silver lines, and his voice rang like glass hitting stone. He greeted Elena with polite words, but his eyes stayed narrow and watchful. He said the Virathi needed more land on Kale-9, because their own worlds were running out of water and minerals. Elena answered in a steady voice. She explained that her people had already lost 2 settlements to dust storms and poison vents. They could not give up any more ground, or the colony would die slow. Mira sat on the floor near her mother's chair. She had a small tablet and was drawing pictures of earth animals she had seen in old books. Ruckus lay stretched out beside her, with his head resting on her leg. Every few minutes, she reached down to scratch behind his ear. He made a soft, grumbling sound that meant he was happy. The Virathi delegates glanced at the animal and made quiet chimes of laughter in their throats. They called him a curious toy, a primitive thing from a backward death world. No one took him seriously. Talks went on for hours. Elena spoke about shared mining rights and water recycling tech. The Virathi asked for bigger shares and offered protection in return. Protection that sounded a lot like control. Elena shook her head again and again. She said her people would rather fight than become servants. Then the mood in the room changed fast. A side door slammed open with a loud bang. Many Virathi soldiers rushed inside. They wore heavy black armor that covered them from head to toe. Long energy lances glowed bright blue at the tips. Their steps echoed on the metal floor like hammers. The lead soldier pushed past the delegates and stood in front of Elena. He held up a thin datapad and said, "Sign this now, or no one leaves alive." Elena looked at the words on the screen. It was a full surrender document that gave away every human claim on Kale-9. She pushed the pad away and said, "No." The soldiers moved quick. 2 of them grabbed Mira by the arms and dragged her out into the open center of the room. Mira kicked and twisted, but they were too strong. She cried out once, "Mama," then bit her lip to stay quiet. Ruckus lifted his head slow, his black eyes locked on the hands holding his girl. His body went stiff, and the hair along his back stood up straight. The room became very still. The other humans froze in their seats. The Virathi delegates stepped back against the walls. Sub-Commander Thalkur walked forward, calm and tall. "Mira," and then at Elena, he said, "The child will make a good lesson. Sign the paper or watch her die." Elena stared at him with burning eyes. She said, "You touch my daughter, and you will regret it forever." Thalkur smiled thin and cold. He nodded to his men. The soldiers raised their weapons. 12 long barrels pointed straight at Mira's small chest. The blue glow on each lance grew brighter and brighter until the light hurt the eyes. Mira looked up at the circle of guns. Her face went pale, but she did not scream. She just whispered, "Ruckus." The honey badger rose to his feet, slow and deliberate. He shook himself once, sending a few loose hairs floating in the air. Then he took one step forward, another. The closest soldier laughed, rough, and kicked out with a heavy boot to shove the animal aside. Ruckus slid under the kick, easy, and kept walking. His lips pulled back slow, showing rows of sharp white teeth that looked too big for his head. Right next to Mira's ear, a low, rough sound came from deep in Ruckus' throat. It rolled out like gravel under boots, and it sounded almost like human speech. Wrong move. The soldier who had kicked stopped laughing. His crystal skin flickered with sudden nervous light. The others shifted their weight and looked at each other. Sub-Commander Thal Kerr raised one long hand to give the order. His mouth opened, but no sound came out, because Ruckus moved first. The honey badger exploded forward like a black and silver bullet. He hit the nearest soldier, low and hard. Jaws clamped down on the armored ankle. Teeth punched through tough material and into crystal flesh. The soldier screamed high and sharp. He dropped his lance and fell backward. Ruckus let go and spun toward the next target. Mira dropped to the floor the second her arms were free. She crawled fast under the nearest table. Ruckus stayed between her and the guns. He dodged left, then right, as blue energy bolts slammed into the deck where he had stood. Smoke rose thick and black. Charged again, he went straight into the legs of the tall soldiers, biting knees and thighs and anything he could reach. One soldier swung his lance down like a club. Ruckus rolled under the blow and came up inside the reach. He bit the soft joint at the elbow. The arm snapped, and the weapon clattered to the floor. Another soldier tried to stomp him. Ruckus dodged and sank teeth into the calf muscle. The soldier howled and hopped back on one leg. Elena shouted Mira's name and reached for her daughter. The girl scrambled out and ran to her mother. Both dropped behind a row of chairs. The other humans pulled back too. They watched with wide eyes and open mouths. No one moved to help, because Ruckus was already doing more than any of them could. The neutral Celt guards who worked for the station stood frozen near the walls. Their rules said, "Stay out of fights between other races." They clicked their mandibles, nervous, but did not step forward. Ruckus kept fighting. He looked small next to the tall, armored Virathi, but he moved like lightning wrapped in fury. He bit through armor plates, tore at power cables, and slammed his heavy body into knees until soldiers fell. A blue bolt grazed his shoulder, burning away fur and skin. He did not yelp or slow down. He just snarled louder and kept coming. Thalkir watched from the back of the room. His crystal face showed no fear yet, but his fingers twitched on his own weapon. He shouted at his men to focus fire. "Kill the beast first." The soldiers tried to form a line. They raised lances together and aimed low. Ruckus stood in the middle of scorched floor, blood already matting his fur. He looked at the wall of glowing barrels, then turned his head once to check on Mira. She peeked around her mother's leg and met his eyes. She gave a tiny nod. Ruckus lowered his head and charged straight into the line of death. Ruckus slammed into the line of soldiers like a living wrecking ball made of teeth and fury. The first Virathi he hit tried to swing his energy lance down hard, but the badger was already too low and too fast. Ruckus ducked under the glowing tip and drove his thick skull straight into the soldier's knee joint. Armor cracked with a sharp snap, and the tall alien toppled forward face first into the metal floor. Ruckus did not pause. He spun on his short, powerful legs and lunged at the next soldier in the row. Jaws opened wide and clamped down on the armored thigh. Muscle and crystal shattered under the bite. The soldier screamed high and dropped his weapon, which clattered away useless. Blue energy bolts lit up the room again. The soldiers fired wild, trying to hit the small, fast target that darted between their legs. Bolts scorched the deck plating and sent sparks flying high. One shot grazed Ruckus across the back, burning a long strip of fur away. Smoke rose from the wound, but the honey badger did not slow or cry out. He just snarled deeper and kept moving forward like pain was something that happened to other creatures. Mira stayed low behind the row of chairs, with her mother Elena wrapped both arms around her daughter tight, and whispered, "Stay down, baby. He has got this." Mira peeked out just enough to see her friend fighting. The little girl bit her lip hard to keep from calling out, because she knew any sound might pull Ruckus' attention away from the danger. The Virathi tried to regroup. 3 soldiers stepped back and raised their lances together, aiming low at the charging badger. They fired at the same moment. A wall of blue light roared across the open space. Ruckus twisted his body in mid-leap and slid under the beams on his belly. The energy passed over him, close enough to singe more fur, but he rolled once and came up running faster than before. He hit the middle soldier in the chest with his full weight. The alien staggered back into his friends, and all 3 went down in a tangle of long limbs and heavy armor. Ruckus climbed the pile of fallen bodies, quick as a shadow. He bit the neck joint of the soldier on top. Teeth punched through the weak spot where helmet met shoulder plate. Blue blood sprayed out in a bright arc, and the soldier went limp. Ruckus jumped off and faced the others, who were scrambling to their feet. Sub-Commander Thalkir stood at the far side of the room, watching with narrowed eyes. His crystal skin flashed red with rising anger. He shouted orders in his sharp glass voice. "Focus on the beast. Kill it, now." The remaining soldiers pulled out bigger weapons. Some had wide-mouthed launchers that glowed deep red. Others drew short crystal blades that hummed with energy. They formed a half-circle, trying to trap Ruckus against the wall. The badger stood in the center of the scorched floor, turning his head slow to watch every enemy. His sides heaved with heavy breaths. Blood dripped from cuts on his shoulder and flank, but his black fur held steady and strong. Eyes burned bright. He looked small and hurt, yet every soldier who met his stare felt something cold crawl up their spine. One soldier with a red glowing launcher stepped forward, brave or stupid. He aimed the wide barrel right at Ruckus' chest and pulled the trigger. A blast of hot plasma roared out like an angry sun. Ruckus leaped to the side. The blast hit the wall behind him and melted a hole big enough for a man to walk through. Smoke poured out thick and black, filling the air with a sharp burned smell. Ruckus used the smoke. He ran low through the cloud, straight at the soldier who fired. The alien tried to reload, but the badger was already there. Ruckus jumped high and clamped his jaws on the hand holding the launcher. Teeth crunched through armor and bone. The weapon fell and exploded when it hit the floor. The blast threw the soldier back and knocked 2 more off their feet. Ruckus rolled away from the flames and kept going. Elena whispered to the other humans near her, "Move. He will finish this." The colonists nodded silent. They had seen Ruckus fight off dust leopards and poison vipers back on the colony. They knew he did not stop until the threat was gone. More Virathi rushed in through the broken side door. They carried heavier armor and longer blades. Their steps shook the floor as they charged. Ruckus met the first one head-on. He dodged a swinging blade and bit the leg just above the ankle. The soldier stumbled, and Ruckus used the moment to climb up the tall body like it was a tree. He reached the chest and sank teeth into the armor joint over the heart. Crystal cracked, and the soldier fell backward, taking Ruckus with him. Ruckus rolled free and faced the next attackers. 2 blade masters came at him from different sides. Their crystal swords swung in perfect time, trying to cut him in half. Ruckus dropped flat to the floor. The blades passed over his head, close enough to shave more fur. He sprang up between them and bit one master's knee while slamming his heavy body into the other's leg. Both soldiers lost balance and crashed into each other. Ruckus jumped on the fallen one and ended the fight with a quick bite to the throat. The room smelled of blood and burned metal. Bodies lay scattered across the floor. Some still twitched, others stared up with empty eyes. The surviving soldiers looked at each other, nervous. Their numbers were dropping fast, and the small animal showed no sign of slowing. Thalkir raised his own weapon now, a long, elegant lance with a brighter blue glow than the others. He pointed it at Ruckus and said, "Enough of this farce. The beast dies here." He fired a thick beam straight at the honey badger. Ruckus saw the shot coming. He twisted hard, and the beam clipped his hip. Smoke rose and he limped for one step. Then he straightened and ran again, straight at the sub-commander. Thalkir fired again. The beam hit Ruckus full in the shoulder. The badger slid back on the floor, leaving a trail of blood. Up Slow shook his head once, and started forward again. Thalkir stepped back. His hand shook just a little on the weapon grip. Mira saw the hit. She cried out, "Ruckus, no!" Her voice cut through the noise like a knife. Elena held her tighter, whispering, "He is tough, baby. He is so tough." Ruckus kept coming. His fur was matted with blood and soot. One ear hung torn and bleeding, but he walked like he owned every inch of the room. The soldiers who were left raised their weapons again, but their hands shook now. They had never seen anything fight like this. Thalkir shouted at them, "Shoot! Shoot now!" The soldiers fired. Blue bolts filled the air. Ruckus dodged and weaved. Some hit the floor. Some hit the walls. One grazed his side and opened a new wound. He snarled louder and charged through the storm of light. He reached the first soldier in his path and bit the leg clean through. The alien fell screaming. Ruckus climbed over the body and kept going, closer to Thalkir, closer to the one who had aimed at his girl. The sub-commander backed up until his shoulders hit the wall. He raised the lance high, ready to bring it down like an axe. Ruckus did not slow. He leaped high, jaws wide open, aiming for the throat. The fight was far from over, but Ruckus had already broken their courage. Thalkir backed against the wall with his lance still raised high. The blue glow on the tip pulsed fast, like a racing heart. Ruckus landed from his leap just short of the sub-commander. The badger hit the floor hard, rolled once, and came up on all four legs. Blood ran from his mouth, and new burns smoked on his shoulder. He shook his head once, flinging drops of blue and red across the deck, then stared straight up at Thalkir. The sub-commander laughed short and cold. He said, "You are finished, beast. Your little girl will watch you die now." He swung the lance down like an executioner. Ruckus dodged left. The blade of light sliced the air where his head had been, and carved a deep groove in the metal floor. Sparks flew high, and the smell of hot steel filled the room. Ruckus did not wait. He charged again, low and fast. Thalkir stepped aside quick for such a tall being, and kicked out with one long leg. His boot caught Ruckus in the ribs, and sent the badger tumbling across the floor. The wall with a thud, but got up right away. His sides heaved hard, yet his eyes never left the enemy. Station alarms screamed now. Red lights flashed across every wall, and a calm voice repeated, "Lockdown in progress, all exits sealed." The force fields around the room glowed brighter, trapping everyone inside. No help was coming from outside. The Celt guards stayed frozen at their posts, watching with clicking mandibles. Thalkir pointed up and shouted, "Drones, deploy now." Heavy panels in the ceiling slid open, and combat drones dropped down fast. They looked like black metal spiders, each leg ending in a gun barrel. Red sensor eyes lit up and locked on Ruckus. The drones hovered for 1 second, then attacked. They spun in tight circles, firing small blue darts that buzzed through the air like angry insects. Ruckus ran under the first drone. He jumped and caught one leg in his jaws. The metal bent, and the drone wobbled hard. Ruckus pulled down with all his weight. The machine crashed to the wall floor, and he bit the main eye sensor. Sparks flew and the drone went dark. He rolled away as the other drones turned to shoot. Darts hit the deck all around him. One struck his hip and stuck, buzzing with electricity. Ruckus snarled and shook hard until the dart popped free. He charged the next drone, leaped high, and slammed into its belly. The impact knocked the machine sideways. It fired wild, hitting another drone. Both exploded in a bright flash of fire and smoke. Ruckus dropped clear and kept moving. Mira watched from behind the chairs. Her small hands gripped her mother's arm tight. She whispered, "Ruckus, come back." Elena pulled her closer and said, "He knows what he's doing, baby. Just stay here." The drones reformed. They flew in a tight group, firing together. Blue light filled the room like a storm. Ruckus weaved between the beams. Some darts grazed him, opening fresh cuts. He growled louder and jumped again. This time, he landed on top of one drone. His claws dug in, and he bit the power. The drone sparked and dropped like a stone. Ruckus rode it down and leaped off before it hit. Thalkir watched with growing anger. His crystal skin flashed brighter red. He shouted at the remaining soldiers, "Form up! Blade Masters advance! Kill the thing slow!" The last Virathi who could still stand stepped forward. They carried long, humming crystal swords. Their movements were smooth and deadly, like dancers with murder in their steps. 4 Blade Masters circled Ruckus. They moved as one, swinging their swords in perfect time. Ruckus stood in the middle, turning slow to face each one. His fur was soaked with blood, and one front leg trembled a little, but he did not back away. The first master lunged, sword flashing down. Ruckus rolled under the blade and came up biting the leg. The master stumbled, but kept balance. Ruckus used the moment to climb higher. He reached the arm holding the sword and bit hard. Crystal cracked and the sword fell. The master screamed and swung his free fist. Ruckus ducked and bit the knee. The tall alien fell to the floor. The other 3 came faster, swords swung from all sides. Ruckus dodged and twisted. One blade cut a long line across his back. Blood welled up fresh. He snarled and jumped between 2 masters. He bit one in the thigh and slammed his body into the other's leg. Both lost footing and crashed together. Ruckus finished the fallen one with a quick bite to the throat. The last master stood alone now. He raised his sword high and charged. Ruckus met him head-on. The badger ducked the swing and went low. He bit the ankle and pulled hard. The master hopped back, but Ruckus followed. He climbed the leg fast and reached the chest. Jaws closed on the armor joint over the heart. Crystal shattered, and blue blood poured out. The master dropped without another sound. Thalkir stared at the bodies around him. His hand shook on the lance. He looked at Ruckus, then at Mira. The sub-commander pointed the weapon at the girl again. He said, "One more step, and she dies. You cannot reach me in time." Ruckus stopped. His legs shook, and blood pooled under him. He looked at Mira. She met his eyes and gave a small nod. She whispered, "I trust you, Ruckus." The honey badger lowered his head, took a deep breath, and started forward again. Slow at first, then faster. Thalkir fired. The thick blue beam hit Ruckus full in the chest. The badger slid back, leaving a trail of smoke and blood. He got up slow, very slow. His body trembled, but he took another step. Thalkir fired again. The beam struck the badger's side. Ruckus staggered, but kept coming. Thalkir backed up until he hit the force field. There was nowhere left to go. He raised the lance high, ready to stab down. Ruckus broke into a run. He ignored the pain, ignored the blood, ignored everything except the tall crystal being who had dared to aim at his girl. He leaped high, jaws wide open, aiming straight for the throat. Thalkir swung the lance down hard. The glowing tip met Ruckus in mid. The badger twisted just enough. The beam burned across his shoulder, but his jaws still closed on target. Teeth sank deep into Crystal neck. Thalkir screamed loud and dropped the weapon. Both fell to the floor in a tangle. Ruckus held on tight. He twisted his head and pulled. Crystal broke away in chunks. Blue blood sprayed across his face. Thalkir thrashed and clawed at the badger, trying to pry him off. Ruckus did not let go. He shook his head hard, and deeper damage happened. The sub-commander went still. His long body slumped, and his eyes stared up empty. Ruckus let go slow. He stepped back and stood over the body, breathing hard. His legs shook bad now, and he swayed from side to side. Mira ran out from behind the chairs. She reached Ruckus and dropped to her knees. She hugged him around the neck tight. Tears ran down her face. Ruckus licked her cheek once weak, then sat down heavy. Elena came next. She knelt and touched the badger's wounds. Her hands shook, dropped with a soft hum. Station medics rushed in. They stopped short when they saw the room full of dead Virathi and one small bleeding animal. Elena looked up and said, "Help him, please. He saved us all." Medics moved fast. Some were human, some were Virathi. They worked careful on Ruckus, cleaning cuts, giving medicine, wrapping burns. Mira held his paw the whole time, whispering "good boy" over and over. Ruckus closed his eyes and rested. His chest rose and fell, slow but steady. He had won the fight. Now he just needed to stay alive. Ruckus hung from Thalkir's throat with jaws locked tight. Blue blood poured down over his muzzle and soaked into his already dark fur. The sub-commander thrashed hard. His long arms swung wild, trying to grab the badger and pull him free. Fingers scraped across Ruckus's back, opening new cuts, but the honey badger did not loosen his grip. He shook his head side to side with short, sharp jerks. Each twist drove the teeth deeper into crystal flesh. Thalkir made a wet, choking sound. His legs kicked out, and his body slammed against the wall again and again. Ruckus felt the crystal start to give way. Pieces broke off in his mouth like brittle glass. He pulled harder. One big chunk came loose, and blue blood sprayed in a wide arc. Thalkir dropped to his knees. The tall alien clawed at his own neck, trying to stop the flow. Ruckus let go for 1 second, then lunged again. This time he went for the softer spot under the jaw. Teeth sank in easy, and he twisted with all the strength left in his small. Thalkir fell forward onto the floor. His arms flailed once more, then went still. His crystal skin dulled from bright shine to dull gray. His eyes stared wide, but saw nothing anymore. Ruckus stepped back slow. His legs shook bad, and he swayed like a tree in strong wind. Blood dripped steady from his mouth, and many wounds across his body. He looked down at the dead sub-commander, then turned his head to find Mira. The girl ran across the open floor. She dropped to her knees beside Ruckus, and wrapped both arms around his thick neck. She buried her face in his fur, and cried silent tears. Ruckus licked her cheek once. His tongue felt rough and warm, even though he was hurt bad. Elena came right behind her daughter. She knelt down and put one hand on Ruckus's back. The badger leaned into her touch just a little. His breathing came in short, rough pants. The force fields around the room hummed once, then faded away with a soft pop. Station security teams rushed in through every door, wore heavy gear, and carried stun batons. Their leader, a tall Celt with clicking mandibles, stopped short when he saw the scene. Dead Virathi lay everywhere. Broken armor and blue blood covered the floor. In the middle stood one small bleeding honey badger, with a child hugging him tight. The security chief raised his baton slow. Elena stood up fast, and stepped in front of her daughter and Ruckus. She said, "He saved us. He protected my child. Do not touch him." The chief looked at the bodies, then at the badger. He lowered the baton and spoke into his comm. No threat. The animal is under human protection. Medics, priority 1. Medics poured in next. Human doctors and Varathi healers worked side by side. They moved careful around the dead and focused on Ruckus. One human medic knelt and started scanning the badger with a small device. The scanner beeped loud when it saw the damage. Multiple plasma burns, deep lacerations, shattered bone in one leg, severe blood loss. The medic looked up at Elena. Said he should be dead already. This animal is impossible. Elena said he is a honey badger. They do not know how to quit. The medic nodded and called for a stretcher. They lifted Ruckus gentle as they could. He growled soft, but let them move him. Mira walked beside the stretcher, holding one of his paws, the whole way to the medical bay. In the bright, clean room, doctors worked fast. They cleaned every wound with gentle sprays and sealed the worst cuts with bioglue. They gave Ruckus fluids and pain blockers through a small line in his leg. He lay still on the soft bed, with Mira sitting right next to him. She talked to him quiet, telling him he was brave and strong and the best friend ever. Ruckus opened his eyes once and looked at her. Then he closed them again and rested. Word of the fight spread across the station like fire in dry grass. People gathered outside the medical bay. Humans from the colony ships, Varathi who had not joined the attack. Kelt workers from every deck whispered about the small animal that took down an elite strike team to save one child. Some called it a miracle. Others said humans were monsters for bringing such creatures into space. Everyone agreed on one thing. Never aim a weapon at a human child when a honey badger is near. The new Varathi commander, a calm female named Lyra Veth, came to the medical bay later. She stood at the door and asked permission to enter. Elena nodded. Lyra Veth walked in slow. She looked at Ruckus, then at Mira. She said the attack was not ordered by our council. It was a splinter group led by Thal Kerr. We are ashamed. Our terms will change. The land stays with your people. We offer aid instead of demands. Elena looked at her long, then said, We accept. But tell your people the truth about what happened here. Lyra Veth bowed low. She said, We will. The honey badger will become a warning across our worlds. She turned to leave, then stopped. She looked at Ruckus again and said, He fought like a storm trapped in fur. Will remember. Days passed slow. Ruckus stayed in the medical bay. He lost most of one front leg. The tail was cut short to stumps. Scars crisscrossed his body like a map of battle. He could not walk far at first, but he tried every day. Medics helped him with braces, and Mira stayed with him always. She brought soft blankets and its favorite dried meat treats from the colony stores. Ruckus ate slow, but he ate. He growled when anyone tried to take Mira away, even for a minute. One morning Ruckus stood on his 3 good legs. He limped to the door and looked out. Mira walked beside him proud. Elena followed close. The 3 of them moved down the hall together. Station people stopped to watch. Some smiled. Some bowed quiet. Ruckus ignored them all. He only looked at Mira. When the time came to leave the station, a crowd gathered at the docking bay. Humans clapped soft. Aliens nodded respect. Mira walked up the ramp with Ruckus beside her. He limped, but held his head high. Elena came last. Their bags. She stopped at the top and looked back at Frontier Hold. Then she turned and followed her family inside. The ship doors closed. The engines hummed. The station grew small behind them as they flew toward Kale 9. Ruckus lay on a soft pad near Mira's seat. She scratched behind his good ear and whispered, Thank you, buddy. Ruckus made a low grumble that meant you are welcome. Back on the red dirt of their homeworld, the colony welcomed them like heroes. Children ran out to see the scarred honey badger. Mira told the story again and again. She always ended the same way. They aimed weapons at the child. The honey badger whispered, Wrong move, and then he proved it. Ruckus healed more with time. He learned to run on 3 legs. He still chased dust hares in the fields, though slower now. Mira grew taller. She helped in the fields and learned to fix machines. But every night, she sat with Ruckus under the stars. She told him he was her hero. He rested his head on her leg and closed his eyes. The galaxy heard the story. Ships carried it to every corner. Worlds updated their records about Earth animals. They wrote one line in big letters next to Honey Badger. Never threaten the child. Peace held on Kale 9. The Virathi sent supplies and tech. No more attacks came. The colony grew strong and green. Mira planted flowers around their house. She said they were for Ruckus, because he liked to smell them in the sun. Ruckus stayed by her side until the end. He never forgot the day he said, "Wrong move." And the galaxy never forgot either. On a big space station called Frontier Hold, high above the planet Kale 9, a small group of humans came for important talks. The leader was Dr. Elena Voss, a smart woman with kind eyes and strong hands. Her 8-year-old daughter Mira came too, because there was no safe place left on their colony to leave her. Mira held the hand of her best friend Ruckus, a short, thick honey badger with silver stripes in his black fur. Ruckus walked beside her like he always did since the day Elena found him as a tiny orphan kit on the dry red dirt of their homeworld. The aliens waiting in the big round meeting room were Virathi, tall beings with skin like clear crystal that shone under the lights. Their leader, Sub-Commander Thalkir, stood very straight and spoke in a voice that sounded like breaking glass. He said the humans must give up half their land on Kale 9, or there would be war. Elena shook her head no, and explained again why her people needed every bit of soil and water to survive. Mira sat quiet under the table, with Ruckus curled near her feet. She drew pictures on a small screen of flowers and running animals. Ruckus watched her draw, and sometimes pushed his nose against her hand to ask for a scratch. The Virathi looked at the animal and made soft laughing sounds. They called him a silly pet, nothing more than a toy with teeth. Then everything changed fast. A door at the far side burst open, and many Virathi soldiers ran in with long energy weapons glowing blue at the tips. They wore heavy armor and moved like one big machine. Their new leader stepped forward and pointed at Elena. He said, "Sign the paper now, or everyone dies." Elena stood tall and said she would never sign away her people's future. The soldiers grabbed Mira by the arms and pulled her into the open space in the middle of the room. She cried out once and tried to twist free. Ruckus lifted his head slow and stared at the hands holding his girl. His black eyes narrowed and his lips pulled back to show white sharp teeth. The room became very quiet. One soldier laughed loud and aimed his weapon right at Mira's chest. The blue light on the barrel grew bright and steady. Others did the same. Soon 12 weapons pointed straight at the small, scared girl. Mira looked at her mother with wide eyes. Elena froze, and her face turned white. Ruckus stood up on all 4 legs. His body looked even thicker now, like a solid block of muscle and anger. He took one step forward, then another. The soldier closest to Mira kicked out to push the badger away. Ruckus dodged easy and kept coming. Close to Mira's ear, a low, rough sound came out of Ruckus' throat. It was not a growl or a bark. It sounded almost like words. Wrong move. The Virathi near the front stopped laughing. Their crystal skin flickered with nervous light. Sub-Commander Thalkir raised one long hand to give the order to shoot. He opened his mouth, but before any sound came out, Ruckus moved. He jumped straight at them. Soldier holding Mira. The badger hit the armored leg high and bit down hard. Teeth went through the tough material like it was soft bread. The soldier screamed and let go of Mira. Mira dropped to the floor and crawled fast under a table. Ruckus let go of the leg and turned to face the others. Weapons fired. Blue energy bolts hit the floor where Mira had stood seconds before. Smoke rose and metal melted. Ruckus ran low and fast between the legs of the tall soldiers. He bit one ankle, then another. A soldier fell and his gun went off wild, hitting the ceiling. Sparks rained down. Elena shouted for Mira to stay down. The other humans pulled back to the walls, watching with open mouths. The neutral guards from the insect-like Celt race stood still. They had rules not to take sides in fights like this. Ruckus kept moving. He jumped on the back of one soldier and bit the neck joint where armor met crystal skin. Blue blood sprayed, and the soldier dropped. Ruckus rolled off and charged the next. The badger looked small next to the tall Virathi, but he fought like something much bigger and much meaner. Thalkir yelled at his men to kill the animal first. They tried. Energy lances stabbed down. Ruckus twisted and dodged. One bolt grazed his side and burned off a patch of fur. He did not stop or cry out. He just got angrier. Mira peeked from under the table and saw her friend fighting for her. She whispered, "Ruckus, be careful." Ruckus turned his head for 1 second and looked at her. His eyes said, "Stay there. I have this." The fight grew louder. More soldiers came through the broken door. They formed a line and raised weapons together. Thalkir smiled cold and said, "Finish it now." Ruckus stood in the middle of the room, blood on his fur and fire in his eyes. He looked at the wall of guns pointed at him, and at the child behind him. Then he lowered his head and charged straight into the line. Ruckus hit the first soldier like a black and silver cannonball. He went low, under the energy lance, and clamped his jaws on the knee joint. The armor cracked, and the soldier fell forward onto his face. Ruckus did not wait. He spun and bit the next leg in line. Another soldier dropped screaming. The others fired again. Blue light filled the room. Bolts hit the walls and floor. One struck Ruckus in the shoulder. Smoke came from the wound, but he kept going. He jumped onto the chest of a tall Virathi and bit the soft spot under the chin. Crystal shattered, and the soldier made a wet choking sound before falling back. Mira crawled out from under the table and ran to her mother. Elena pulled her close and held her tight. Both watched Ruckus fight. The honey badger looked like he had no fear at all. He treated every gun barrel like a stick to chew, and every soldier like prey that needed to be taught a lesson. A Virathi officer tried to grab Ruckus from behind. The badger twisted fast and sank teeth into the officer's arm. The arm snapped at the elbow, and the officer howled, "Let go," and ran toward the next group. Thalkir shouted for heavy weapons. 2 soldiers pulled out bigger guns with wide mouths that glowed red. They aimed at Ruckus and fired. A blast of hot energy roared across the room. Ruckus leaped to the side. The blast hit a table and turned it to ash. Ruckus did not slow. He ran straight at the 2 with the big guns. One tried to step back, but Ruckus was faster. He climbed the leg like a tree and bit the hand holding the weapon. The gun fell and exploded when it hit the floor. The blast threw 3 soldiers away. The room smelled of burned metal and blood. Elena whispered to her team, "Let him finish this." The humans stayed back. They knew Ruckus would not stop until Mira was safe. More Virathi poured in. They wore thicker armor and carried long blades made of shining crystal. They formed a circle around Ruckus and closed in slow. Ruckus stood in the center, turning his head to watch every side. His sides heaved and blood dripped from many cuts. But his eyes stayed sharp. Mira called out, "Ruckus, come here." The badger looked at her once, then back at the circle of enemies. He lowered his body close to the floor and waited. The blade masters stepped forward together. Their weapons swung down in perfect time. Ruckus rolled under the first swing and came up biting a leg. He pulled hard, and the soldier lost balance. Another blade came close and cut a long line across Ruckus' back. He snarled and kept fighting. One master stabbed down with force. Ruckus dodged, and the blade stuck in the floor. The badger jumped on the handle, using it like a ramp to reach the master's face. He bit the crystal jaw and twisted. The master screamed and fell back, clutching his broken face. The circle broke. Other soldiers rushed in to fill the gaps. Ruckus met them head-on. He bit, tore, scratched, and slammed his heavy body into knees and hips. Soldiers fell one after another. Some tried to shoot, but their friends stood in the way, and bolts hit their own. Sighed. Thalkir watched from the back. His crystal skin flashed red with anger. He pointed at Mira and shouted, "Take the child alive. She is the key." Two soldiers broke from the fight and ran toward Elena and Mira. Elena pushed Mira behind her and raised her hands. No weapons, just open palms. The soldiers hesitated for 1 second. That was enough. Ruckus saw them coming. He left the group he was fighting and ran full speed across the room. He hit the first soldier in the side and knocked him into the second. Both went down hard. Ruckus stood over them, growling deep in his throat. The room grew quiet again. Only heavy breathing and the sound of dripping blood could be heard. Ruckus turned slow to face Thalkir. The sub-commander stared back. His hand shook a little on his weapon. Ruckus took 1 step forward, then another. The honey badger looked small and hurt, but he walked like he owned the whole station. Part 2 ends here, with Ruckus moving closer to the leader, who started it all. Part 3. Thalkir stepped back and lifted his weapon high. He shouted, "Lock down, now!" The walls hummed and thick force fields snapped up around the room, trapping everyone inside. Red lights flashed, and a voice from the station said, "No one leaves until order is restored." Big combat drones dropped from the ceiling. They looked like metal spiders with guns for legs. Their red eyes scanned the room and locked on Ruckus. The drones moved fast, spinning and firing small blue darts. Ruckus dodged left, then right. One dart hit his hip and stuck, buzzing with electricity. He shook hard, and the dart fell out. Mira clung to her mother and watched with big eyes. Elena whispered, "Stay calm. He knows what he is doing." Ruckus ran under a drone and jumped. He caught the bottom leg in his jaws and pulled. The drone tilted and crashed into another. Both exploded in bright sparks. Ruckus rolled away from the blast and kept moving. More drones came. They formed a wall between Ruckus and Thalkir. The sub-commander smiled again and said, "The beast will tire soon. Kill it slow."